Welcome to 10 Forgotten Hillbilly Dinners that have faded into history. These meals weren't just food, they were survival, pride, and memories seniors still cherish. Stick around and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to keep these traditions alive. Number 1. Hominy. This was the corn staple of hillbilly kitchens, a dish that carried tradition and sustenance into the 1970s. Seniors recall how dried maize kernels were soaked in lye or lime water, swelling into soft, chewy hominy that could be fried, stewed, or served with beans. It wasn't just food, it was a reminder of Native American ingenuity, passed down through generations and kept alive in Appalachian homes. The flavor was mild yet hearty, a blank canvas that absorbed smoky meats or savory broths, turning simple meals into comfort. Elders often said, hominy filled the belly when nothing else would, because it wasn't just corn, it was memory tied to survival, cultural legacy, and the pride of stretching harvests into nourishment that lasted all year. Number 2. Groundhog Stew. Groundhog Stew was once a frontier classic, a dish that carried the grit of survival into the hills and hollers. Seniors recall how hunting groundhog wasn't just about food, it was about resourcefulness. Families made use of whatever the land provided. The meat was simmered low and slow with onions, potatoes, and garden vegetables, turning tough cuts into a hearty stick-to-your-ribs stew. In the 1970s, it was still remembered as a winter staple, tied to stories of elders who said, that pot kept us warm when the snow piled high. The flavor was rustic, gamey, and rich, a taste that spoke of resilience and ingenuity. Folks often joked it was country cooking at its boldest, because Groundhog Stew wasn't just a meal, it was a memory of making do, of kitchens alive with chatter, and of traditions that turned necessity into pride. Number 3. Apple stack cake. Apple stack cake was the pride of Appalachian kitchens, a dessert that carried both history and heart into the 1970s. Seniors recall how this cake wasn't just baked, it was built. Thin layers of spiced cake stacked high with slow-cooked, dried apple filling spread between each tier. The recipe had roots in mountain communities, where weddings and holidays were celebrated with this towering treat, each family contributing a layer to make the cake whole. The flavor was tangy and sweet, the apples mingling with cinnamon and nutmeg, a taste that spoke of togetherness and tradition. Folks often said that stacked cake was the centerpiece of the table because it wasn't just dessert, it was memory, a symbol of community pride, of kitchens alive with chatter, and of holidays where every slice carried the legacy of generations. Number 4. Corn Dodgers. Corn Dodgers were the crunchy sidekick to hillbilly suppers, a food that carried frontier grit right into the 1970s. Seniors recall how these little cornmeal cakes were fried or baked until crisp on the outside and tender inside, often served alongside beans, stews, or a slab of fatback. The recipe had roots in pioneer days when Dodgers were quick to make and easy to carry, a kind of edible symbol of resilience. The flavor was rustic and hearty, with that unmistakable corn bite that reminded folks of campfires, wood stove kitchens, and long nights after hard work in the fields. Elders often said, Dodgers were the real deal, no fancy stuff, just good eating, because they weren't just food. They were memory, a reminder of survival, of simple pleasures, and of dinners where every bite carried the pride of making something out of nothing. Number 5. Rabbit Fricassee. Rabbit Fricassee was the kind of Sunday dinner that made folks feel like kings, even in the hollers. Seniors recall how rabbits were hunted fresh, then simmered slow with onions, cream, and herbs until the meat turned tender and the sauce rich. This dish carried old-world roots from French kitchens, but found a new life in Appalachian homes, where resourcefulness met flavor. The taste was savory and delicate, a reminder that even humble game could be turned into something downright fancy. Elders often said that rabbit fricassee was real fine eatin' because it wasn't just food, it was memory, tied to family tables, laughter, and the pride of turning simple catches into a meal worth celebrating. Number 6. Pickled pig's feet. This was the daring bite of hillbilly suppers, a dish that carried tang and toughness straight into the 1970s. Seniors recall how jars of pig's feet sat on pantry shelves, cured in vinegar, spices, and salt, until the meat turned tender and the flavor sharp. It wasn't just food. It was proof that nothing went to waste in the hollers. The taste was bold, sour, and chewy, the kind of flavor that made folks grin and say, "Now that's country eatin' with some kick." Elders often laughed about how kids scrunched their noses, while grown-ups treated it like a badge of pride. Pickled pig's feet weren't just a snack. They were memory, tied to resilience, resourcefulness, and the excitement of pulling something wild and tangy straight from the jar. Number 7. Leather britches. This was the dried bean treasure of hillbilly kitchens, carrying the wisdom of preservation into the 1970s. Seniors recall how green beans were strung on thread and hung to dry, shriveling into leathery strips that could last all winter. When the cold months came, those beans were simmered with ham hocks or fatback until they softened again, releasing a smoky, deep flavor that tasted like pure mountain comfort. The recipe had roots in Appalachian resourcefulness, proof that nothing went to waste and every harvest was stretched. Folks often said, leather britches were the real deal, old-time eatin', because they weren't just beans. They were memory, tied to survival, family pride, and the joy of turning something humble into a dish that warmed the soul. Number 8. Fat back. This was the salty punch of hillbilly dinners, a cut of pork that carried both flavor and necessity into the 1970s. Seniors recall how strips of fatback were fried crisp or simmered slow, used to seasoned beans, greens, and cornbread until every bite carried that smoky, savory kick. In lean times, it wasn't just a garnish. It was the main event, proof that nothing went to waste in the hollers. The taste was bold and briny, the kind of flavor that made folks grin and say, "Now that's some real country cookin'." Elders often laughed about how fatback could stretch a pot of beans into a feast, because it wasn't just food, it was memory, tied to survival, resourcefulness, and the pride of turning scraps into something downright unforgettable. Number 9. Corn chowder. This was the creamy comfort of hillbilly kitchens, a dish that carried warmth and simplicity into the 1970s. Seniors recall how fresh corn was simmered with milk, butter, and potatoes, turning into a thick, hearty chowder that could chase away the chill of winter nights. The flavor was sweet and savory, a blend that made folks say, "That chowder stuck to your ribs and kept you grinning." It wasn't just food, it was memory, tied to evenings when families gathered close, bowls steaming, laughter echoing, and the taste of corn reminding them of summer fields even in the dead of winter. Corn chowder was proof that simple ingredients could become pure comfort, a dish that carried pride, resilience, and the joy of sharing warmth at the table. Number 10. Pork ribs with sauerkraut. This was the tangy feast of hillbilly kitchens, a dish that carried celebration and strength into the 1970s. Seniors recall how pork ribs were simmered slow with sauerkraut, the meat soaking up that sharp fermented flavor until it turned tender and juicy. It wasn't just supper. It was a gathering meal, often served at holidays or big family tables, where the smell filled the house and made folks say, "Now that's a rib dinner worth sitting down for." The taste was bold and hearty, the mix of salty pork and sour cabbage creating a flavor that stuck in memory. Elders often laughed about how sauerkraut stretched the ribs into a full feast, because it wasn't just food, it was legacy, tied to family pride, winter warmth, and the joy of turning simple ingredients into a dish that felt like pure celebration. And that wraps up 10 forgotten hillbilly dinners that have faded into history. These weren't just meals, they were memories, stories, and legacies carried by our seniors. If you felt the nostalgia, hit that like, share, subscribe, and drop a comment to keep these traditions alive. Let's make sure the flavors of resilience and pride never fade away.